Vish, whether it's Surtain or anybody that your heart desires, do you believe that the 49ers should trade some major capital to go get one more big star, or would you prefer that they hang on to a majority of their, especially their early draft picks, and just ride it out through the draft? What would you like to see happen?
Yeah, I would like them to keep accumulating depth because right now they have all their stars basically quota filled up and they got to pay another one in Brandon Ayuk. I don't know that adding a Pat Surtain contract, even though I don't know how feasible that trade even is, because when you're talking about Pat Surtain, they might have to move even one or two of those stars we're talking about to acquire a player like that. So I don't even know how feasible that is. But when you're talking like that, I don't know that the Niners need to add that right now. They have their contracts. They have a lot of long-term contracts that are about to kick in. Jesse, you talk about this all the time, the futures on their cap. They have a lot of backloaded deals that are about to really hit in terms of taking up cap percentage. Of course, the cap is constantly increasing, but you still have to pay that money at some point, and they're about to pay that money to a few different guys. They have Brock Purdy coming up. To me, it makes more sense. You have 11 picks to be able to spread apart and add depth to this roster and take your opportunities at different spots. Of course, in the case that you can get a guy like Patrick Surtain, this entire conversation changes because we're talking about a Hall of Fame talent at corner, frankly. That's what he is. He's a Hall of Fame talent. Whether his career turns out that way, he's that talented enough to then receive that kind of accolades at the end of it. So that does change the conversation. I just don't think it's feasible. And I don't know that there's a lot of star players other than Surtain that really move the needle in terms of moving monumental assets. But Surtain, even though that wouldn't be something I want them to go, Surtain would be the kind of player that changes this entire conversation because he's better than just, okay, I'm trading for a good player. You're getting a 24-year-old franchise best corner in the NFL, and that's a very valuable commodity to have.
Okay, Larry, where are you at with this whole thing?
Well, I don't like the idea of trading draft choices for veterans as a rule. As a rule, I really don't like it because I just think you always need more depth. And when you sell out for individuals, it just puts an awful lot of pressure on those individuals to stay healthy. But in this scenario, to me, there's a right and wrong time to trade for a veteran. And the right time is when you're in your Super Bowl window and you're desperate. And the wrong time is the rest of the time. And I think the 49ers are in their Super Bowl window and somewhat desperate. I mean, Ambry Thomas is a major question mark / liability. They don't believe in Womack. They obviously don't believe in Luter. They're too deep at corner in an era where you need three corners, and you just got beat by L'Jarius Sneed and that McDuffie. Nickel corner. McDuffie was awesome. Those guys were tremendous. And I think if you're going to learn from that experience, I mean, learn from the Rams. The Rams went and got Ramsey, and they traded for the veteran. They won the Super Bowl, and now they got down the road and they moved off of Ramsey. But I mean, Surtain is a difference maker. Difference makers on the perimeter are worth it. And I think now with the way they've attacked free agency, I mean, where are the needs? How many real needs do the Niners have? I mean, realistically, let's just quickly go down the roster. They have 3 quarterbacks. They don't necessarily need a quarterback. They've got 5 running backs and a fullback. They don't necessarily need a running back. They have a bunch of receivers. They don't necessarily need a receiver. They could use a tight end and an offensive lineman or two on offense. So let's say they have 3 needs. Let's say they have tackle, guard, and tight end.
But you're talking about needs only for this year. And that's where I think if you're talking about a guy like Surtain, you're also giving him money long term that's going to add to additional needs. So they don't have those needs this year. But Brandon Ayuk, if he's not re-signed, all of a sudden wide receiver is a need because Deebo Samuel's a year also away then going into next year of being away from getting a new contract, right? Running back is not a need today,
I'm saying you got 10 picks, and you probably are going to have a hard time drafting 10 guys that can make your roster. You got a really deep defensive line. You went and signed 2 veteran linebackers, and you got Greenlaw coming back. So you're pretty stacked at linebacker, even though I would love to see them draft another one. We already kind of talked about how they have a need at safety. So to me, it's like you got a couple needs on offense. You got a couple needs on defense. On defense, what do you really need? Well, you need Surtain. You need a number one corner that sits Ambry Thomas's butt on the bench. And Surtain to me makes sense in this scenario. Now, what's it going to take? I would say it's going to take a first, a second, and a third, or it's going to take, and it may be over 2 drafts. Like maybe you could trade your second and your third this year and a conditional pick next year. That's a 2 that can become a 1 if you win the Super Bowl or something along those lines. But I think 2 2s and a 3 is probably going to be the price tag, or possibly a 1, a 2, and a 3 with the 1 being deferred. I think that could be the price tag. And I think that 49ers are in a unique position where they can afford to pay that right now. And I think I can make a compelling argument that they should. And also, I kind of look at this year and I say, well, if you could get Surtain out of this draft and rebuild your offensive line, would you consider that a slam dunk draft? And I kind of think I would. And with all the picks they have, they could. I like some of the tackles that are going to be there in the 3rd and 4th round. Garrett Greenfield from South Dakota State, Javon Foster from Missouri. Those guys are going to be there in the 3rd or 4th round. You might be able to go Zach Frazier at 31, trade your 2 and 3 for Surtain, and in the 4th round, take Greenfield and Foster back to back. Now you've got Zach Frazier, who's just I don't know if you've seen this West Virginia center, but he's just a ridiculous dominating force at center. He looks like the kind of guy that he's going to walk in the room and they're going to say, "Hey, Jake, beat it." You know what I mean? He looks like the kind of guy that would start day one. But if you could get a dominating center and a couple tackles that you like and Surtain out of this deal, out of this draft, I should say, I think they're uniquely positioned. But I will say this. I do sway on this day after day because there are a lot of defensive linemen that I really think are special in this draft, and I wouldn't mind picking off a couple of them, and maybe Surtain's not the way to go. And I do like, as I named for you guys, the corner market on day 3. I think there's 4 or 5 or 6 really decent guys that can make the roster, but they're not Surtain. They're not number one corners. So
where are we getting the 2 2s and a 3 price for Surtain from?
I'm just saying, I think a 1, a 2, and a 3 is probably what it's going to take. But maybe you could go 2 3 this year, 1 next year, or maybe you could go 2 3 this year and a conditional pick that it could be a 2 that could be a 1 next year. I mean, I look at Denver and they don't have a quarterback. They're clearly in a rebuild. They need to move this player for picks. The 49ers are have picks. They've gone through the last couple of years with no number ones because of Trey Lance. I think the Niners, if the price tag is a 1 next year, a 2 this year, and a 3 this year, I can make that payment. I can make that trade because I feel good enough about the compensatory picks, the depth. And I think Surtain's that special. I mean, Surtain to me is better than Snead. I mean, they've talked about maybe a second for Snead. Well, first of all, that's never going to happen because Kansas City, Brett Veach is never going to trade Snead to the only team that could probably beat them in the Super Bowl. So the Niners are not getting Snead, no matter, even if Snead goes for a 2. But they could maybe get Surtain. Surtain's a perfect player. He's a player in his prime who plays in the other conference for a team that doesn't have a quarterback, that's in the biggest rebuild there is, that needs picks badly. And the Niners have a bunch of picks and comp picks coming. So I just think most years I would never entertain it. This year, I think I definitely would.
I'm sorry. I'm having a tough time finding out how you trade for Pat Surtain without giving up 2 1s. That's what I'm having a tough time.
I mean, I've never seen that in print. I've seen a 1, a 2, and a 3 in print. That's all.
But I haven't seen any reporting on Patrick Surtain necessarily being moved. It's been speculated, but it hasn't been like, oh, the Broncos are going to move their best player either if you're looking for
no, but
and I've seen this deal happen in 2020, 21 with the best corner in the NFL at the time in Jalen Ramsey, and that was 2 1s and a 4.
Yeah,
this is that deal. This is that guy. This is Jalen Ramsey again. 5 years.
Well, I mean, we
later.
can. I mean, we don't know what the price tag is. If the price tag is a 1, a 2, and a 3, I think I could do that deal. That's what I'm saying.
I'm just saying, like a week ago, we were talking in this show about Brandon